that human beings are physically very weak, but intellectually means it is very powerful with its own intellect. But the mind comes in between with its impulses, behavior, instinct, and paralyzes the intellect. So when it paralyzes the intellect, we become very weak. Look at the tiger, the elephant, and the snake, and even the virus. Current virus seems to be more powerful than our physical body. We cannot sustain, we cannot survive. Millions of people were killed. So, but physical power cannot make animals more powerful than us. Say a simple example, the tiger has only the paws. Intelligent or the intellect or the power is limited, controlled by the nature. So if they want to attack us, they can attack with the mouth or jaws and the paws. But we human beings can attack tiger not only with the stick, with the pistol, with the rifle, with the sword. That is the power of the intellect. Same way we can attack our weaknesses, we can attack the impulsive and the instinctive mind by the power of intellect. Masters says that this power of intellect is attained or gained by a constant contemplation and reflection over problem. If there is a problem, I have to think. I have not to get carried away by it. I have to use my power of intellect to find the right knowledge, use it, and then, same way, to bring an end to the suffering. That is why our masters talk about principles of Eastern wisdom to discover our real self. There comes another aspect that we talk of merit and demerits. We talk of sins and virtues. All animals do not suffer from sins and virtues. They do not commit any sin. Animals do not commit any sin or virtues. Why? Because they do not have a choice. But from where the choice comes from an intellect. When I think I have an option. So animals do not have a choice. So even if the tiger kills the deer, it is not considered as a sin. But I have a choice as a human being. So when all the religious religion talks about sins and the virtues, so they talk with reference to this choice. If we do not make a right choice, we get carried away by our preferences, and the preferences, likes and dislike, comes from the mind, and the mind is impulsive, instinctive. It wants an emotional dependence. It considers the pleasure outside is only the peace. So over-dependence, likes and dislikes, attachment and detachment and reaction, that paralyzes the intellect because we stop thinking. So we started our understanding that our body is extremely weak. We are physically perhaps the weakest living being. Even the virus can kill us, which cannot be seen. Leave aside the tiger and the elephant. But we have an enormous power of intellect. But that is paralyzed by the intellect. That is paralyzed by the mind. And what is this mind? Mind likes to move with the preferences, likes and dislikes, habits, instinct, and impulses. That makes us very weak. That causes the sorrow and the suffering. So, sins and virtues, we have come that the intellect, because the intellect is independent, unlike the animal intellect, we have a freedom of observation, we have a freedom of choice, decision making. And once we make the decision, can we hold on to the decision after finding out this is the right knowledge I'm sticking to? So when we hold on to that knowledge, uh, that is known as, in Sanskrit, it is known as dharana. It is the power of holding to the knowledge that is right. What happens? From there, the inspiration comes in the intellect. And that inspiration motivates us to follow the path of self-discovery. Briefly, I just thought better to talk. But when the mind is carried away by the false notions, then this mind paralyzes the intellect, means that the mind does not allow the intellect to contemplate and think. A simple example. We always say, think before we act, but we seldom do it. If you think before you act, question of anxiety and the reaction do not arise it. In any situation, in any relationship, to act before I know it, to desire it before I know it, I simply desire without knowing it, then I'm crazy, I'm lazy. To know it, then to desire it, then to act on it, that is what Master says that you are wise. We discussed about it, to know it, to understand it, then we desire. We follow the path of the Shreyas. I think I discussed in detail the path of the Shreyas and the path of the Preyas. So this about the intellect, there is a famous phrase every master talked about, and this is a beautiful principle. It says, Janati ichhati karoti. Janati. Janati means to know it, to know anything, to know it, to understand it. Understanding comes by thinking, asking the question about the validity of that object, that event, that situation in my mind, so that the intellect becomes clear. So when I'm clear, then I can have a desire. So why I should have a desire with the right knowledge? So that the desire is not the binding desire. I also discussed about the binding desire and unbinding desire a couple of times. So now I don't have a binding desire. Let me have an unbinding desire, finished. And once I have the right desire with the right inspiration, I put it into the right action. So what is going to happen? You are not only creating a favorable condition at the time before acting, during the action, after the action. And that changes the mindset. That changes the behavior. That changes our attitude. That changes our attitude. So, the entire journey of the Eastern wisdom that I have been talking about, that it is the power of intellect, power of right understanding, power of knowledge. So once the intellect is set on the right knowledge, we can discover that real self, which is full of peace and happiness, love and wisdom. So what is the exact conclusion, what we are talking? That our intellect is uncultured, if I say so. It is ill-informed. It is not having an enough faith. Why it does not have an enough faith? Because it does not have the right knowledge. Why it does not have the right knowledge? Why it does not have the right knowledge? Because the mind takes our thought and behavior in a different direction. There appears to be a conflict in us. Tell me, we have a conflict in relationship, we have a conflict about situation, we have a conflict about profession, we have a conflict even about, oh, whether I get a good sleep or not today. We are so desperate. Almost in everything. Outside, we say, you are such a wonderful friend of mine, but if that friend of yours stay for a little longer period, you feel discomfort. Then you say, I'm such a good guy or a good. We don't have that clarity. We don't have that clarity. If you are saying to your friend that you are such a lovely and a good friend, I love you, I respect you, but if he or she stays for a little longer period, I find that I'm totally uncomfortable now. We do not know what kind of a people we are. We respect a person until our selfish self-interest is fulfilled. We don't care a person because the person is good. So we already have a conflict in our mind. With that conflict, we live, we think, we live and think and act in our life. How do we expect to live into that peace and happiness and love and wisdom? Yes, the once we have understood that this is how we all human beings work, our master says that we have to put the intellect into service because it is the most powerful instrument with the right knowledge, with the right desire, with the right action. You forget about earning, you forget about everything in the world. You follow these principles. My master used to say everything fall into the right place in your life. Yeah, I want to link it this with also to the power of faith. Now we talk about, we should not have a blind faith, but we always have a blind faith. Why? Because the intellect is not thinking. It is crippled. It is paralyzed. So my open faith is based on my preferences, based on my likes and dislikes. And that causes a lot of problems. So That causes lot of problem. So what happens? You see that you are in pursuit of the right knowledge, following these principles. There is a clarity. That clarity about the direction of the life gives you the firm knowledge, and when the intellect lives into that firm knowledge, it is known as the faith. We are not talking of blind faith. It is known as the faith. So once the intellect has a faith, then what happens? Then you are inspired to take a right decision about your life. There is no conflict. The selfishness goes away. And once you take the right decision, you hold on to that knowledge, you put that knowledge into action. So, action in relationship, action in profession, action in a particular situation changes your life. So, that power of faith, when we say it comes from the right knowledge, but the right knowledge comes when we start thinking and contemplating. What happens, the last point, and then we will start our journey of practice, that when we have this power of faith, you will discover that you have dropped the burden of lot of conflicts and duality from your mind and from your body also. The body feels so light and easy, it's carefree. There is a clarity about your relationship, about your thought, about your speech, about your action. At least 50% of the unnecessary problems and worries and conflict drops. The very selfishness, because when the intellect is paralyzed by the mind, we are living in a cocoon. We are very much limited in ourselves. So that being limited in myself, this is self-centered life. And that self-centered life is regulated by the ego. So ego finds itself limited, it wants to become big. Why it wants to become big? Because in a limited sense of awareness, it finds it is bound, it is suffering. So that makes the person very selfish. It has a strong likes and dislikes. It has an emotional dependence. It has a lot of challenges. But that limited ego cannot become big. So it wants to be big by having a big car, big house, costly clothes, and a long list. So you buy a luxury car parked outside your garage. The neighbor says, "Who cares?" All your ego is shattered. You stand before the mirror for 3 hours to look so beautiful. No one appreciates your big ego. You felt that now you have a big ego. Your ego is shattered. So when the intellect remains paralyzed, there is no way to progress and evolve to get rid of the sorrow and the suffering. So that limitedness wants to become unlimited. It cannot happen. I always used to give an example. The Bill Gates, 130 billion plus 27 years of loveless life. It is that ego that made your life loveless. Because your intellect is paralyzed on that aspect. You are super intelligent in your computer technology, no doubt about it. So Master says that it is a lopsided growth of the intellect. My master used to say that if you study science, go to a formal school, it definitely develops your intellect, but it is a lopsided, one-sided intellect for the material gain in the world. But no progress inside. You may be a chosen expert doctor, but you may be criminal inside. But in this journey, it says it will not work. You are cheating yourself unless you clear yourself inside. Then only you can discover your real self. Otherwise, there is no chance. No, I am not to be good to the others. I have to be good to myself. Good to myself. No reservations. I give an example. Say to someone, I love you so much, honey, you are the best friend of mine. And after a few hours and few minutes, I find that I'm totally uncomfortable with that guy. I'm cheating myself. Well, one example, we can apply that in every different situation. Then one day his group, this young guy in his 30s, he lives in New York. So he found that he is living such a self-centered life. He's a big guy in IT, and then he opted for doing an MBA. So he met all the classmates. He lived there for almost 2 or 3 months, and he saw each one is talking about competition, jealousy, and a hatred, and what they will do and how much they will earn. But he was also learning for the last 1 year. In my private lessons, last week he told me that he left his MBA. He's not interested. He is interested in his expansion of consciousness rather than the expansion of the wealth. And that he has taken a decision after regular contemplation and reflection. Because he found that whenever he goes to the MBA, everyone talks about the same jealousy, hatred, and expansion of their wealth and the recognition, because that makes you totally self-centered. This is what Master says, we have paralyzed the intellect. But the beauty of this guy is that he said, I have taken hold on MBA. I said, I'm not going to do it for a year. Let me understand myself clearly. And I said, that is the right decision. So once your intellect is ready that you are not doing it for selfish reason, you are doing it for expanding the knowledge in your intellect. To not only to evolve yourself, but also to help others to evolve. You will get the reward. Reward will definitely come. You need not to think about the wealth. So this is a brief what this Gita talks about, how to make an impact in your life by regularly listening, learning these principles. Second step is contemplation, and the third is practice. So let us start our practice. Close your eyes and